Ethan Miller lived a quiet life in a modest suburban home. His days blurred together between coding, coffee, and lonely evenings. One evening, scrolling through an online forum, he received a message from Lila Harper, a charming, witty, and mysterious woman who seemed to understand him in ways no one else did. Their conversations escalated from casual chats to long video calls, where laughter and intimacy filled the screen. Ethan shared dreams of travel, family, and companionship. Every message pulled him deeper, convincing him that love could bloom even through pixels and Wi-Fi signals. As the months passed, he started imagining a future with her, unaware that the life he was building online was a carefully constructed illusion. As months passed, Ethan's life began revolving around Lila. Every morning, he woke to her cheerful, good morning texts. Every evening to long video calls filled with laughter and whispered secrets. He confided in her his fears, financial struggles and dreams, feeling a depth of connection he had never experienced. Lila, with her carefully curated charm, made him feel seen and desired, but behind her words were subtle manipulations. She hinted at needing help to visit him, painting scenarios of loneliness and longing. Ethan, consumed by love and trust, began rationalizing his finances around a meeting that seemed like destiny. One night, Lila sent a message that would change everything. "I wish I could be there with you," she typed. "I just need a little help to make it happen." Ethan froze, heart pounding. The request was vague, but urgent, wrapped in her vulnerability. In his mind, this was the final step toward finally meeting her in person, and he was willing to do anything to make it real. Rational thought blurred under the weight of desire, and he began planning the unthinkable, selling his house to fund her arrival. Friends' warnings echoed faintly in the background, but in his mind, love justified the sacrifice. The day Ethan listed his house for sale, a mixture of excitement and fear surged through him. His home, the place where he had built a quiet, stable life, was now a stepping stone to a digital fantasy. He imagined Lila stepping off a plane, the two of them embracing, finally closing the gap between virtual and real. Nights became restless, dreams haunted by both anticipation and doubt. Each passing day intensified the illusion of their imminent meeting, and the lines between reality and online fantasy blurred beyond recognition. Weeks later, with the house sold and funds secured, Ethan booked the plane tickets. The airport loomed large, both exciting and terrifying. In every thought, he envisioned Lila waiting for him, the culmination of months of longing, laughter, and shared secrets. But as he scanned the bustling terminal, scrolling through his phone, a news alert popped up. A breaking story about a con artist defrauding multiple men, with a photograph that made his blood run cold. The face staring back at him was unmistakably Lila, yet the warmth and laughter he knew so well dissolved instantly into a nightmare. After months of planning and saving, Ethan imagined the moment he would finally meet Lila. Every day leading up to the trip, her messages grew more insistent yet affectionate, painting herself as helpless and dependent on him. Ethan's friends warned him to slow down, but the thrill of impending reunion drowned out caution. Each text, each video call, became a tether, binding him emotionally, while subtly undermining his judgment. In his mind, love was not just a feeling. It was a responsibility, a duty to make her real. The line between desire and obsession blurred, and he could no longer see that the connection he trusted might be built on deceit. Days before Lila's arrival, Ethan began feeling the strain of secrecy and financial sacrifice. He explained little to family and friends, convinced that love justified his actions. Lila's messages alternated between flattery and veiled guilt. She hinted at loneliness, danger, and dependency, expertly tugging at his emotions. Ethan's confidence wavered, yet he pushed forward, rationalizing the risk as an act of devotion. Every smile, every playful wink from the screen reinforced his belief in her sincerity, while the small inconsistencies he noticed remained ignored or rationalized. The night before he was to leave, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stared at the photographs he had printed from Lila's profile, each one a testament to a fantasy that felt more real than his own life. His apartment, once familiar and comforting, now seemed like a stage set for a story that belonged to someone else. Doubts crept in, brief, fleeting, but every message from Lila extinguished them. She was careful to appear vulnerable, yet strong, weaving a narrative that made Ethan feel both needed and indispensable. His heart had surrendered entirely, leaving logic behind. At the airport, Ethan waited for Lila. Excitement mingled with a gnawing anxiety he tried to suppress. He scanned the arrival's gate repeatedly, imagining her emerging from the crowd, the two of them finally closing the gap between digital intimacy and physical reality. Every call and message replayed in his mind, creating a montage of trust and longing. The public space felt isolating, each passing traveler a reminder that the fantasy he had nurtured existed only in his mind, and he had sacrificed everything for it. Then came the moment of horror. As Ethan glanced down at his phone, a breaking news alert appeared. Woman wanted for multiple online frauds. Victims across the country. The photograph accompanying the story made his stomach drop. It was her, Lila Harper, 28, blonde, blue-eyed, but not the woman he knew. The smile on the screen, once intimate and warm, now carried the weight of betrayal and danger. The realization hit him like a punch. The love he had invested everything in was a carefully constructed lie, and the life he had risked for her had vanished in an instant. Ethan's hands shook as he gripped his phone, staring at Lila Harper's photograph in the breaking news alert. Panic flooded his chest, mixing with disbelief and denial. Could it be a mistake? He replayed every conversation, every smile, every tender message, trying to reconcile the woman he adored with the criminal the media described. Around him, the airport buzzed with motion, but Ethan felt suspended in time, trapped between a fantasy that had driven him to sacrifice everything and a terrifying reality that had shattered it in an instant. Desperation drove Ethan to approach the authorities. Detective Ramos, male, short black hair, sharp eyes, dressed in professional attire, listened carefully as Ethan recounted every detail. Months of digital intimacy, sacrifices made, and the looming arrival of the woman he thought he loved. The detective's face was calm but grave, each word Ethan spoke reinforcing the gravity of the fraud. For the first time, Ethan realized that the online world he had trusted so implicitly was a labyrinth of lies, and the woman he had built his life around might never exist. Later, Ethan returned to the now empty house he had sold, wandering through the echoes of a life he had abandoned for an illusion. Each room was a memory of stability, each corner a reminder of the sacrifices he had made. The walls, once a sanctuary, now felt alien, their familiarity replaced by a crushing sense of loss. His phone buzzed again with more messages from Lila's account, but he no longer recognized the warmth behind the words. The truth had stripped them of any comfort. He had been deceived, and there was no turning back. The media frenzy intensified as Ethan's story became public. News anchors recounted the con artist's exploits, each report adding weight to his shame and anger. Lila Harper, 28, appeared in multiple articles, her smile a chilling reminder of the manipulation he had endured. Friends and neighbors looked at him with sympathy tinged with disbelief. Every headline and photograph reminded Ethan of the life he had risked, the house he had sold, and the trust that had been weaponized against him. His world, once orderly and safe, had been upended by the digital illusion of love. That night, alone in a dimly lit hotel room, Ethan stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of their online interactions. The laughter, the flirtation, the promises, all were a carefully orchestrated act designed to exploit him. Regret gnawed at him, but it was paired with a dangerous clarity. The world he had trusted behind a screen was not the same as the world outside. His story was no longer private. It was a cautionary tale of vulnerability, deception, and the peril of trusting too easily in a digital romance. The crash had come, sudden and brutal, leaving only the wreckage of his heart and his life. In the days following the revelation, Ethan faced the reality of his financial ruin. The house he had sold to bring Lila Harper home was gone, and so were his savings. Creditors called relentlessly, bills piled up, and the comfort of his routine evaporated. Each phone ring was a reminder of the price he had paid for trust. He wandered through his empty apartment, now a shell of the life he had known, haunted by the knowledge that the woman he loved existed only in a digital illusion. Fear, shame, and anger coiled together, leaving him exhausted and vulnerable. Detective Ramos, male, short black hair, professional attire, worked tirelessly to trace Lila Harper's movements. Ethan provided every screenshot, every message, and every piece of digital evidence. Investigators confirmed that multiple men had been similarly deceived, some losing homes, life savings, and years of emotional trust. Each revelation compounded Ethan's guilt and disbelief. He was a victim, yet part of him blamed himself for allowing a stranger's charm to dismantle his life. As news outlets picked up the story, Ethan became both a victim and a symbol of online deception. Reports highlighted Lila Harper, blonde, blue-eyed, and the scope of her con, showing photographs of her in luxurious settings. Ethan struggled with the public attention, feeling exposed and humiliated. Friends reached out with empathy, but strangers' judgment and curiosity were inescapable. Every headline, every retweeted article replayed the betrayal, making the trauma painfully public. Emails, social media messages, and news updates arrived relentlessly. Some offered sympathy, others judgment. Ethan's digital world had transformed from a sanctuary into a battleground, where every notification carried anxiety. He realized that the online persona he had trusted so completely was a construct designed to exploit his empathy. As he sifted through the endless data, he began the painful process of untangling himself from a web of deception that had cost him his home, his finances, and his sense of safety. That evening, alone in a dim hotel room, Ethan reflected on the chain of choices that had led him here. The house, the savings, the trust. It had all been stolen, yet the lesson was indelibly clear. He began to document his story, hoping that others might learn from his pain. In the quiet darkness, a mixture of sorrow, anger, and clarity settled over him. He could not undo the past, but he could confront it, understanding that the digital world, while alluring, could be as dangerous as it was captivating. This was his reality. A crash, a loss, and a hard-earned wisdom born from deception. Weeks after the fallout, Ethan Miller sat quietly in a small apartment he had rented, surrounded by remnants of a life once imagined. The digital traces of Lila Harper haunted him, the screenshots, the messages, the photos, but their power had diminished with distance and perspective. He reflected on the ease with which he had been drawn into her web, realizing that emotional vulnerability can be exploited more subtly than any force of nature. The lessons were bitter, yet the clarity of understanding offered a fragile form of solace. The human heart, though easily deceived, can also recover with awareness. He began documenting his experience, not only for personal closure, but to warn others. Every word he wrote was a mirror to his vulnerability. Every sentence a reconstruction of the moments he had misjudged. Ethan understood that deception often thrives in loneliness and trust, preying on desire and hope. By sharing his story, he sought to transform pain into education, turning personal trauma into a cautionary tale against the allure of online fantasy. Ethan reflected on trust itself, how it can be both a strength and a vulnerability. The digital world, full of instantaneous connection and endless possibility, had offered him the illusion of intimacy, a shortcut to companionship. But the lesson lingered. Relationships require more than words on a screen. They demand reality, context, and discernment. The temptation to believe in someone's curated persona is powerful, Yet the consequences of misjudgment can be devastating. Though devastated, Ethan found a small measure of strength in his survival. He reconnected with old friends, cautiously rebuilt financial stability, and approached future relationships with a tempered heart. The scars of betrayal remained, but he had acquired something invaluable: insight into the delicate balance between hope and skepticism. Each day he practiced discernment, learning to trust cautiously, understanding that emotional fulfillment cannot be forced through screens or illusions. In the quiet evenings, Ethan often revisited the story of Lila Harper, not with anger, but as a reminder of human vulnerability and resilience. He had been deceived. Yes, but he had survived, learned, and begun anew. His narrative became a warning for others, a testament to the hidden dangers of online connections and the importance of discernment. Love, trust, and desire are powerful forces, but the clarity to distinguish between reality and illusion is what safeguards both heart and life. Weeks after the scandal went public, Ethan Miller attended the first court hearing regarding Lila Harper. The courtroom was imposing, filled with journalists and curious onlookers. Detective Ramos sat nearby, reviewing evidence. Ethan recounted his story with trembling voice. The months of messages, the sacrifices, the sale of his home. As he spoke, he realized that recounting his trauma publicly was both humiliating and empowering. He had no control over her actions, but he could assert control over his own narrative. The courtroom revealed the scope of Lila Harper's deception. Multiple victims had been manipulated into financial ruin, each telling similar stories of digital intimacy turned betrayal. Ethan listened as testimonies unfolded, each echoing his own pain. The law began to trace her virtual footprint, revealing the organized, calculated nature of the fraud. Ethan's anger mingled with relief. Finally, the reality of her crimes could no longer be denied, and justice had begun its slow course. After days of proceedings, Ethan walked out of the courthouse, sunlight bright and sharp against the stone facade. Reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward, cameras flashing. He answered questions cautiously, his voice steady but wary. Though the legal process was far from over, he felt a measure of vindication. The woman who had stolen his trust and life would be held accountable, and his story could serve as both warning and evidence for others navigating the perilous world of online connections. In private moments, Ethan reflected on the lingering impact. Though justice moved forward, the emotional scars remained. Every online notification, every new message, carried a cautionary echo of his experience. Detective Ramos reminded him that awareness and vigilance were the best safeguards, and Ethan slowly internalized the lesson. In a world where personas can be fabricated and trust weaponized, wisdom is the strongest armor. His journey had cost him dearly, yet it had left him resilient, cautious, and more aware than ever of human fragility. As the trial continued, media coverage painted a clear image of digital deception. Ethan's story became emblematic of the dangers of online relationships, inspiring public awareness campaigns and articles. Though he had been exploited, he transformed into a voice for vigilance and caution. In quiet moments, he would still think of Lila Harper, 28, not with hope or bitterness, but as a reminder of human vulnerability and the necessity of discernment. The reckoning had not undone the past, but it offered the possibility of future wisdom. Months had passed since Lila Harper's crimes were exposed. Ethan Miller had slowly begun to reclaim his life. Though he would always carry the weight of betrayal, the raw shock had softened into a cautious resilience. He focused on small routines, morning walks, reconnecting with old friends, and rebuilding the trust he had once freely given. Each day reminded him that survival was not just about enduring hardship, but about learning from it and moving forward with awareness. Ethan began sharing his story more openly, speaking to online safety forums and small community groups. His experiences became cautionary lessons, demonstrating how charm and manipulation can mask danger in the digital world. He emphasized emotional awareness, skepticism, and the importance of verifying online relationships before investing trust or resources. Through this work, his pain became a purpose, transforming trauma into advocacy. Evenings brought quiet reflection. Ethan often revisited the story in his mind, analyzing how trust had been exploited and where his own judgment had faltered. Though sorrow remained, it was tempered by understanding. He realized that the online world offers both connection and illusion, and that vulnerability is both a gift and a risk. Each lesson, though costly, had strengthened him, preparing him to navigate future relationships with clarity and caution. Over time, Ethan reestablished his financial independence and rebuilt a modest home environment. Though the scars of betrayal lingered, they became reminders of resilience rather than shame. He cultivated friendships slowly, valuing trust earned over time rather than presumed from words on a screen. Each day became a deliberate choice to embrace life despite the shadows of the past, a quiet triumph of awareness and self-preservation over manipulation and loss. Years later, Ethan reflected on the experience as a defining chapter of his life. Lila Harper faded into the story of caution and learning, a figure representing the dangers of online deception. Ethan's life, though altered, was richer in wisdom and clarity. He had learned that trust, though fragile, could be rebuilt. That vulnerability, though risky, could coexist with discernment. And that survival, after betrayal, is not just endurance. It is the cultivation of insight, resilience, and hope.